We're Batman at 89.
Hello, and welcome to Minute 20 of Batminute 89, the podcast where we snoop through the multicultural armor-ridden rooms of the mansion that is Tim Burton's 1989 Batman film, 1 minute at a time. Whew. I am one of your hosts, Niall McGowan.
I am the other one, John Parker.
And today we are once again joined by our first guest, one Rikky Wiley. Say hello, Rikky.
Hello, isn't this good?
Hey.
You better believe it.
But minute 20 begins with Alexander Knox frantically gesturing to Vicky Vale about something, and minute 20 ends 1 minute later with both of them making fun of multicultural artifacts that cost more than they earn in an entire year. So, beginning of this, as we say, we get a brief shot of Knox flailing his hand at Vicky to.
Well, it's quite rude, really. I don't think in this, I don't think in this day and age you would get a sympathetic character. He's effectively clicking. It's like he's clicking over a waiter or something like that.
Oh God, I can't stand that.
Yes. Although I've never actually seen that happen in real life.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have established, too, that this room's pretty crowded, but it's kind of like, he could just go over to her and be like, oh, come here. You know? So he is, yes. I think he's essentially going, I think it's the gesture to follow Gordon, or to look at him, or whatever.
To look at Gordon, yes, that's what it is.
He's trying to be sneaky, but he just looks creepy. Yeah, let's be honest.
You could imagine if the camera had panned out and you'd see the rest of the room and like people stood in twos and threes having chats, and then one person with like his arm outstretched, desperately gesticulating in the middle of all of it. He'd probably be the most attention-worthy person in the whole setting, wouldn't he?
Absolutely.
We've also got in the background here, which we had in the last minute and didn't come up, what I could only presume to be Prince's hip-hop beat background music. Did you guys notice this?
We did cover the soundtrack in another minute, because we think it's Vicky Waiting from the soundtrack, but it's been retooled and like loads of stuff's been added in on top. So it just and actually it genuinely, like, it took me like a couple of like properly craning in and going like, it doesn't. It sounds a bit like it, but I don't know if it is. And then eventually trawling. It took a surprisingly long time trawling through Google to find someone going, yeah, that's what it is. So
yeah, it definitely sounds like a different mix of it, though. It's not the one that's on my vinyl copy.
So I could only presume they've made it less distracting, because it kind of just ticks along, doesn't it, in the background? It's not like, which begs the question. I presume this is the music that they're playing at the party.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
This isn't the score, is it? This is the music they're playing at the party. Do you know what the ratio is in the film? Is Prince's music always part of the... Is it always diegetic? Is that the word? Like, are the characters supposed to be able to hear the music being played?
Yeah, I think every time it's played for us, it's played by a person on like a radio. Yeah, so it is. Yeah, it's diegetic in terms of... it's playing in the film, that it's audible to everyone else there. It's not just like, as you say, like the score, where it's just like, only we get that little treat, you know?
I mean, I presume when Batman flies up to the moon in the Batwing, Danny Elfman, he probably has that piped into the cockpit of the Batwing.
Oh, absolutely. Why wouldn't you?
I do know, like, anytime I ever played any of the Arkham games, like, most of the time in my head, I'm just going like, dun, 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 dun. And they give you music on top of it. It's like, not good enough. Nah.
Yes.
No, I just mute my TV and put my Prince soundtrack on, so get that spinning.
It's just kind of weird though, like a really intense, difficult boss fight, and then like Scandalous is playing in the background.
Let a woman be a woman and a man be a man.
Oh, you can do our new theme song. That's staying in.
So who chose this music? I'm not willing to move from the music yet. Like, I can't imagine that Bruce Wayne was like, oh, these are the beats. These are the dope beats that I want playing during my film.
Exactly what I was thinking. Like, this does not seem like his kind of music, and it also doesn't seem like the kind of music that these guests are going to be wanting. Yeah, so it's not like he's playing it for their benefit.
It's an older audience, isn't it?
Yeah, they're kind of like, they're a very kind of cruddy, fuddy-duddy looking sort of crowd, really, aren't they? But maybe maybe it's one of the things like they've invited Prince to the party to help with. Maybe they want him to get him to play the festival. And they're like, we better stick on some of his crap because and then he won't be like, oh, these guys genuinely like me. Maybe I'll play this gig.
I once saw a frame of a Batman comic where Batman says that he hates punk music. He talks about that he likes classical music, I think.
Oh, I'm stopping this show now.
Stopping all shows. And I think he's saying to Robin in the Batmobile that he thinks that punk is like music for disordered savages or something, and that he likes his classical music.
Well, to be honest, I could see that fitting the character, though. Yeah,
yes,
you can't imagine Batman listening to the Sex Pistols or the Ramones or something.
Yeah, but you think though with Batman like channeling a lot of rage, he would have a bit of time for that though. In terms of like, yeah, it's just its unbridled passion, and it's it's anger and frustration working its way out through an art form. You think he'd be like, oh, I get that as well.
If you think about a lot of the hardships that the Batman overcomes, I mean, especially, it's in this film as well, but also in the the comics Nightfall and the like, Dark Knight Rises. I think Chumbawamba.
Oh my God!
Every opportunity just to get him out of bed first thing, he's just got to get that going. Otherwise, where to get the inner strength from?
We did just get the word there last week that Danny Elfman's actually been hired on to score the Justice League soundtrack. You could fire him over a quick tweet and go like, Danny, got a slight suggestion for a Batman's new theme for you. It's like, we know you don't want to have to rework a guy you already spent 2 films doing the music for, so here you go.
We know you're pretty much phoning it in now anyway, Danny, so you might as well.
Oh yeah, we have mentioned that briefly. Yeah,
well, God knows Tim Burton is the only person who's still putting out what seems to be decent performances is Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
We're in the middle of the I think we referred to it as the Michael Keatonaissance, but
yes, including even in the actually unwatchable, like I was unwatching it whilst I was watching it, the RoboCop reboot.
Oh God, no!
That was just absolutely dreadful. But even Michael Keaton in that was like, nope, they're paying me money to do it. I'm going to put my all into this, and he was like charismatic. He gave a watchable performance.
Well, that's what you want, isn't it? Someone to put the effort in, even when it's not deserved. Basically,
he might. The mentality might be like the healthy way of going. Like, this film is terrible, but I want people to remember that at least I was good. So I'm not going to lower myself to it. I'm going to rise above the schlock I've been given.
You will have the high ground. The good thing, whilst we're having this podcast, somebody is having a conversation now with you and McGregor, like undoubtedly, about please come and do this film, please come and do this film.
Oh yeah.
And that's because he turned up to those prequels and he did exactly that. He was like, even if I am the only good thing in this film, I'm gonna put my all into it, and hats off to him.
Yeah, he's one of the best things in them, without a doubt.
So there you go. We've covered the first 4 seconds of the clip there.
4 seconds, yeah. Oh, actually, yes. When we need to get back on topic, I'm going to play a little sound.
I like it.
Back to Batman.
Very good.
So we've got Knox and Vicky. They head off together into this amazing.
No.
What do you want to call it?
You're skipping ahead there a little smidge.
I'm afraid you are. We've got Knox clicks towards Vicky, and then we cut back to the romance between Gordon and Officer Robert.
Gorbert, as they are shipped.
Yes. And it's who's in charge here? Eckhart, sir. And he's like, you. And,
well, I think that's why I skipped ahead, to be honest, because nothing happens.
Well, you say that, but it's what's suggested, I think, in that, because what we'd seen as intimacy in the previous minute, I think just as they exit the frame, it just crosses the border into sensuality.
Well, Prince will be on board with that.
Yes, indeed. He says, let's go. And then as they're walking out, he leans even closer into Officer Robert and it's like, let's go. Like, you know where we're
Let's
going.
go crazy.
You know where we're going. There's plenty of empty bedrooms in this mansion.
I have to say, I do think that this is perhaps Pat Hingle's finest line delivery in the whole film. So I do love his, oh my God, come on, let's go. And I love that he has the arm around him. It's really like, we never see this Gordon again. This is like he's one of the guys. He's just him and Robert. They're the best of buddies. It's like as soon as he snaps into commissioner mode again, it's all downhill. It's all megaphones and like I want him taken alive and all this kind of nonsense.
We also see in the background the return of the famous party decorations that you mentioned. The bedraggled bunting, just like you can't actually see, but I presume it's like blue tacked to the wall, just like dribbling down the wall.
They are the cheapest ones he could find as well, I think.
I think I'm still convinced it was probably Alfred himself who made them, though. It's like, oh, Alfred, we need some decorations. Just very good, Master Wayne.
Gets out his crafts kit and sits there all afternoon weaving it together.
So now Knox and Vicky head off into, what would you call it? It's amazing. An armory?
Well, I think of it as an armory, but Knox refers to it as an arsenal.
An arsenal, which doesn't seem like the right word.
Yeah, I want to find out more about this, and Googling it just brought up lots of football clips.
Really? Yeah. Are you sure you just weren't typing in like subconsciously football things because you just weren't interested in finding out what it actually was?
There's a possibility. They come into the room, don't they? First, you hear them whispering outside, and then Knox opens the door, and then they stand there in the dark for a moment, and it's a really nice shot. It's very symmetrical, and that pleases me. And they open the door, and for a moment you can see them stood in the doorway, and there's something very bridal about the stance that they're in. It's almost like being given away, walking down the aisle.
I didn't notice that. Yeah, you're right.
With the tuxedo and the silhouette of her in her bridal wear.
Oh, it is a proper wedding dress looking thing as well. So
I wonder whether this is when I start going, because we're talking about art, is every single thing that I think about it valid? Because then I started thinking loads of things about it. Well, 2 things about it. And I'm going to say them because we're talking about something cultural, and that means it's valid. But
yes, go
I'm
for it.
Sure it didn't cross Tim Burton's mind once. But are we getting into, is this as we're stepping into the area of Wayne Manor where we start dealing with duality and different inner personalities that we have that we don't show to the world, and how odd Batman is, how odd Bruce Wayne is? Are we seeing them as the bride and groom, as if that's the conventional life, and this is the intrusion of these people who have a conventional life by comparison coming in there into this weird area somewhere where they shouldn't be?
That's a great way of looking at it. I love that.
You've also got bisecting the screen horizontally as well. Their reflection in the marble floor is like the dark version of them underneath it. And again, it's kind of like we're entering this area of duality and people's hidden darker side.
It's a bit Twin Peaks.
Yeah. I mean, that's all. It is perfect. I actually do have a note myself for. I think it was for later this minute or the next minute, but I had a brief note on the floor because because it's black and white, a checkered pattern. Yeah. So that's obviously the good versus evil, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's definitely deliberate.
But I have come across things as well saying that this is the typical floor design of like the Masonic lodges.
Masonic lodge, isn't it? Yes, it is indeed. Do you know how that? Since we're talking about black and white, that's why when in the Middle Ages. The king, when he was cashing up, sorting out his cash, he would break it up into like an abacus. He would have all these black and white squares on a big table, and he'd mark out the different representations of the different amounts of money that he had into all these squares so that he could work it out. Then he got somebody else to do that job, but the table itself was referred to, because this is Norman times, it was referred to as a chessboard, but it was the French version of chess because it was the Normans, and so it was échec. And the word, even though the job of whoever sorts out all the cash for the country has changed hands and the way they do it is different, it's always had that French word associated with it because of the black and white table that the king used to have hundreds of years ago. And that's why we have the Chancellor of the Exchequer now. It's got the etymology linking all the way back to chess from back then.
That's amazing. Ricky here dropping the knowledge.
Is this all stuff you just knew already, or did you go really deep in looking in this at this floor?
That was a random synapse that hadn't fired for about 10 years. That happened to chip in at the right point.
It's like all I had was I looked into the Masonic Lodge floor, and it was just like. The mosaic pavement is a representation of the ground floor of King Solomon's temple and is emblematic of human life, checkered with good and evil. I was like, that's enough. That's fine.
While you guys were doing all that, I was watching it and counting how many lights Nox turns on.
The lights are amazing, aren't they? And
it's a shocking amount, though. He turns on 6 different lights, which I was just disgusted at. Well, you don't need that many switches.
Have you noticed how he switches it on as well? Because the place that they're filming it in, I don't know if you guys got this far, the interiors for Wayne Manor, I have written down here, Hatfield House in Hertfordshire.
Yes. Yeah, that's the one.
There you go, tick for me. We can all go and visit there one day when we do the live show.
Yes, live at the house.
Indeed, we'll do a seance. No, it's a different show. And it's an Elizabethan house, which begs the question, why would there be an Elizabethan-style mansion in the barely discovered eastern seaboard of America? But that aside, obviously didn't have its own light switches in for all those lights that don't those lights just look like they are film studio lights that are barely out of frame. And there's clearly no light switch. So have you seen what Nox does to switch it on?
Is he just sort of tapping a wall or what?
He just reaches behind a suit of armour and then they play the sound of some clicking and then all the lights come on. But it's like they couldn't even be bothered putting like a pretend light switch anywhere. Just like, just reach behind something and we'll just pretend the light switch is there.
But I have to say as well, like in terms of, he's shouting out like, he's supposed to be he's doing that half shout, half whisper, like, Commissioner Gordon. I think like they've very quickly gone from like he's legitimately trying to chase Gordon to find out what's going on to I just want to have a nosy around this guy's house and I'm going to use this as an excuse because he's walking in that room, he sees it's pitch black, he knows Gordon's not in there, and the way he's shouting out, it's like he's not going to hear you anyway. So
he wants to look at this stuff because it's cool.
It's a time-sensitive thing that they're doing as well, isn't it? It's not like they're like, oh, we can go find Gordon later, because they know that Gordon's just got some juicy info and has rushed off to go and deal with it. But they're just like, we can have a little mooch around for a few minutes first. It's like,
maybe they realised he's gone. They're like, we've missed our chance, so let's just snoop.
Well, it would be like I can imagine the next morning. Then it's like, did you hear that like the right hand man of like the biggest gangster in the city fell into a vat of chemicals in a bus and and like Gordon was there? It's like if you guys had followed him, you would have been there to like photograph it and everything. It's like
oh my god,
that's a shame. What were you doing? Oh, we're making fun of some armor.
Well, speaking of armor, though, you get you see briefly a piece here that I really like, and you see it again later. But I'll talk about it now because on initial inspection, as someone who is, as I've mentioned, a fan of Batman movies, haven't read a lot of comics. It looks a bit kind of like it's from the First World War, a bit steampunky.
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about because you see about 6 or 7 or maybe even 8 suits of armor, but there's one that you see a glimpse of it here and then the camera dwells on it later, and it's beautiful, isn't it? It's kind of it's like a deep sea diver. But with a gas mask, but with a World War One rifle. It's
lovely. I was very drawn to it instantly. So I looked into it, and this might be common knowledge to a lot of people, but I didn't realize it's loosely based on a character from not comics.
Yeah. I've got notes on this myself. Yeah.
Is this Ratcatcher?
That's him.
You know what? I'm not giving you that one, guys. I just don't buy it at all.
It doesn't look that similar, I'll be honest.
I think I suppose before we press on, we should explain who Ratcatcher is to the audience in case they're like, what are you talking about?
Is he a deep sea diver, gas man?
No, the Ratcatcher, it's in the DC comics is Otis Flanagan, and he's a guy who could essentially control rats, and apparently he also had the homeless working for him as an army at one point. But in prison and stuff, he can get rats to come to him to smuggle, and one of it seems like he's very much like a C-list villain, or if not a D or below. Although he's one of those ones, and almost like a nod back to this film. Very unlikely, but and I think all of the Arkham games, you can find his outfit. Like he's an Easter egg everywhere. Like in like an asylum, like you go through one of the vents, and one of his suits is beneath you at one point, and then you do the click, and that's a riddle. You win that kind of thing. But that's all he ever amounts to. So
the description just screams to me, even as you were describing it then, I don't know the character, that'll be someone that I saw, like I had an audio file unlocked when I was playing Arkham or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly his status.
Yeah, and never listened to.
Yeah, but I have to say, like, we can hash this out now, but like he does, I don't think it's an intentional Easter egg either. But he does look like him. Like there is he's got the same canister in his back, the same little gun thing, the same mask, and even he has like Ratcatcher, the character, has kind of twisty curly hair, which you could equate with the kind of things coming out of his helmet.
He does, because he's got like a telephone cable going to. Well, I think it's going to like a radio on his elbow.
Yeah, it looks like really impractical, actually. Yeah,
it's kind of hard to take it all in, to be honest.
It looks like if he moves his elbow, that's going to come falling out of his helmet. It looks really inconvenient, actually.
I think I'm gonna, having heard enough rumors, and I'm sure you guys know more about it, about Tim Burton, which I may have mentioned before, and I'm sure it's come up. Tim Burton just not being that bothered about Batman, and certainly not delving into the mythology of the Dark Knight or anything like that. I would be amazed if it was a Christopher Nolan one and there was something like that in. I'd say maybe it was a reference, and certainly in this modern DC one, I'm sure they're dropping in references left, right, and centre.
Oh God, every scene.
Yeah.
But I think this is Tim Burton being frustrated with the fact that he's kind of making what he knows to be a studio pleasing Hollywood blockbuster, and he knows in these few shots he can go full Tim Burton, and I think this is this is him doing that, because it's the lenses on the gas mask. Yeah, it's very Tim Burton-y to have lenses on things. He's got
it is actually, yeah.
He's got Sleepy Hollow has the crazy lens magnifying glasses that they put on when they're investigating the crime scene.
I want a pair of those.
It's all very the gas mask man is a very Tim Burton design to me. Which is kind of a disappointment, because I really wanted to. I chose these minutes specifically. You guys very kindly let me choose my minutes, and I said, as soon as watching the film again, I was like, I'm having that armory scene, because there will be so much background information about all those suits of armor, the original sketches they came from, where with they would have been featured in other films and that type of thing, and I have found nothing.
Yeah, there's not a lot.
There is very little.
I mean, I spent about 4 minutes talking about the floor. That's how little there is to find about it.
But you think even in the commentary, Burton would be like, I'll tell you exactly where I got all these things. Nope. He's rattling on about Michael Keaton. He doesn't mention at all where he got them. So,
but I do have one thing, though, that I found in the draft, the original 86 draft.
Oh, yeah.
That I found it interesting. Nobody else probably does. But in the draft, it describes items that are on the wall in great detail. And one of them is listed as a thuggy rope.
Ooh.
Now, so I had
Temple of Doom on us over here.
That's
exactly.
What it is, Temple of Doom, isn't it? Yeah.
I had a look into it, and it turns out it's a type of garrote used by the thuggy cult. So, like, what was going on in the 80s for them to be so obsessed with the thuggy, who nobody has ever heard of, pretty much?
I think maybe it could have been at that point, though, in like 86, it could have been Sam Hamm had just watched Temple of Doom. He's like, I like that movie. So
sorry, did the thuggy really exist?
Yeah, it's a real thing.
What? Tell me more.
Should we tell him more, or should we get the sound effect out to?
Yes, quick, distract him with the sound effect. No, the thuggy. They were like a gang of sort of robbers and murderers and things. I don't know a lot about them. Did they have a religious thing? Let me see.
Do you have a sound effect you can play whilst you hastily Google something? Is there a sound effects for? I'm just going to look this up online. Give me a moment. Google should just play that automatically when you go onto the homepage.
Right, let me see if there's any religious.
It'd be good for like people who were like angrily googling, just like I'm gonna go prove this guy wrong, and just hearing that and be like, oh, it's a kind of subconscious starts calming everyone down. And it's like I'm not that angry. I don't have to prove myself right. You know.
Yeah. So looking at it, the Thuggee, as I said, were murderers. But it says here that they would, well, as this suggests, they would strangle people. That was their method of killing. So they were called fansagars, which means noose operators or stranglers. That's what the British troops called them. And 2 or 3 of them would gang up and kill one traveller and then dispose of the bodies by throwing them down a well.
And what era is this? What era of history?
We are looking at, it's around sort of 1880s.
Oh, and so I also want to say, is that like during the Raj? Is that like Indian subcontinent?
Yeah.
This was taking place? Right, okay.
Yes, it's in India. And it says they were responsible for, well, the Guinness Book of Records thinks that they were responsible for 2 million deaths.
Ooh.
But some more conservative estimates have said 50,000 over 150 years.
That's impressive though for like strangling, like 2 million stranglings to death is like that's full on. Jesus. I do have to ask that when the stranglers, when they were disposing of these bodies, were they singing Golden Brown at the time as well? Or? That was the Stranglers, right? That could be like that.
I got it. That was
thank God.
You were right. Don't worry.
I was shocked that like no one was going So I was like, oh, maybe I got the reference wrong there. So
do you guys know what the song Golden Brown is really about?
I think I know.
I know what it's not about. It's not about Batman. but yeah,
actually,
no, go ahead. So.
It's actually about, and you can look this up. It's actually about cheese and potato pie.
Oh right, okay, that is not what I thought.
When you get it exactly right, a nice cheese and potato pie, golden brown, texture like sun.
I don't know enough to dispute that, so I'm gonna let it stand.
That's one of those things that just sounds perfectly. It sounds perfectly believable. It's like because it's just like this great poetic song. It's like that's all. It's all about that. You know, there's beauty in everything. So
there's no need to frown.
But anyway. So Vicky points out how Bruce gives lots to humanitarian causes, but then he's collecting stuff like this.
Yeah,
which is, I mean, you can do what you want with your money, but she has a point if he's having a fundraiser.
No, I thought this was a bit judgmental because he bought these years ago. So it's like, he's given to humanitarian causes, but then she's like, and then collects all this stuff. Like it seemed to be more was judgmental because it's armor. But it's like, just because he likes armor doesn't mean that he's like a warmongerer. Like he's still a good guy.
I suppose that we did see how anti-war she is from her photography in an earlier scene.
Oh, that's fair enough, actually. Yeah.
So it could be that. I hadn't considered that.
Yeah, yes. You could have got spot on, actually. I just thought like she was, because her and Knox both get into this now of it's just sort of trying to make fun of Bruce Wayne basically and to take him down a peg. And I think it seems to be one of those things like, well, one of them's doing it, so the other one it's kind of egging on the other one. So like Vicky Mail mightn't mind this armor, but like he's making fun of him, so he's like, oh, I'll make fun of him as well. And
I think Knox is more intimidated than Vicky Bale is because Knox is trying to woo Vicky Bale, albeit subtly. Yeah. So I think he's more eager to.
Yeah, and particularly because he obviously, it's explored much more in the 86 draft of the script, but like Knox is very much, a love rival to Bruce Wayne in that film. And this one, he sort of takes a bit more of a backseat, but there is the underlying thing that like he obviously likes this girl or this woman.
Oh yeah,
and he's about to have her swept away from him by a man who's infinitely better in potentially every way. So
every way.
I feel like we've gone away from the many beautiful suits of armor too fast. So if I could possibly drag us back to the other suits.
Oh yeah, definitely so. Yes.
there's the one that I've potentially got the least. You could talk about all of them for a long time, but the one that Vicky Vale notices whilst she's having a sly dig, the one that she scoffs at, is like your standard medieval suit of armor, except that it's got these weird. It's got like a ratchet thing up the front of the mask, and it's got excess spikes all coming out the side.
Yeah,
that again felt. Without having seen the film for 1,000 years, that felt like Sleepy Hollow to me. That felt like Tim Burton alluding
absolutely.
to torture devices as well as suits of armor in the suit.
Well, a lot of it I was trying to take as, you know, the point of this armory scene seems to be like an indication as well of, like, it's a slight the beginnings of like an indication that Bruce Wayne is Batman, in that he's accumulated all this armor so he can build his own armor. So he knows like the best way to go about it. And I was looking at those spikes and I was like, well, what's the rationale there? And it could have, at a stretch, it could be like, well, maybe from that he took like the inspiration for the bat ears, because they're kind of like the spikes on top. And he's just reappropriated it in a strange way. It's like, oh, it's intimidating, and it could have them sharpened, and if I ever need to use them, I can, and that kind of thing. But.
And also the spikes, that certainly makes sense. But also the spikes on his, what are they called? On his arm, on his forearm?
Oh, the gauntlets.
Are they called gauntlets? Are they really?
Yeah, I've heard them called gauntlets, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct.
So certainly that they wouldn't be they wouldn't have an intimidating factor, because you probably rarely get to see them, but they are like erroneous spikes in places you wouldn't imagine, so it does kind of match, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe the ears are actually solid spikes. I've never considered that. Maybe they're not just rubber or something.
Well, I think very much in that the actual practical outfit, they're definitely rubber.
Oh,
but maybe in film canon, it could be that they're supposed to be more of a weapon in their own way as well. But
I like
because we never see the Michael Keaton Batman have any rationale for why he chooses a bat. Like Christian Bale one is like, oh, it ties into he was always afraid of bats and all this sort of thing. And like even the Ben Affleck one even has him fall down in the well and it's all the bats. But Michael Keaton's one just seems to be like, he's mentally scarred from the death of his parents, and for some reason he's now Batman. So
he just loves Bat out of hell. I mean, that's the real answer to that.
You also see in the Christopher Nolan one, which it's one of the things I really like about the many ways to try and justify this kid's character looking the way he does, is that Christopher Nolan has the scene where he's using a listening device to listen into Falcone, and he's just just Bruce Wayne, and he's got the hoodie, and he's got a listening device that sticks up inside his hoodie and kind of forms the bat ear. Do you remember that bit in Batman Begins? That's kind of, and then that gets integrated into his suit as like an extra listening device. I do love that. But no, I think you in the story in universe, I think it's good that what you're saying, the suits of armor are kind of like Batman's research projects that he's done. But I also think that, like, again, it comes back to Tim Burton having a certain amount of contempt for the story that he's telling. In that, I think it's like Tim Burton's gone out and found, certainly with the samurai outfit, and to a certain extent with the knight outfit as well, he's gone out and found examples of times when people have dressed up ridiculously to go out and be a knight or be a warrior or try and sort things out. So he's kind of found all these different examples, so that just, in your own head, subconsciously you'll watch it go, see, it's not that ridiculous, because, it did happen throughout history that people would dress up crazy and go out and kick ass.
Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it, that, yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually, yeah.
My favourite example of that, and you only see it for a second in a very weird shot, is when we first get the shot where everything's where they flip the imaginary switch on the knight's arse, and all the lights come up, and then it does a jump cut, which is very weird, to the reverse angle shot just for a second, which is very odd in itself to do. I've got nothing to say about it other than it's very odd for the camera to suddenly flip 180 degrees to the other side of the room, and you see the same shot from the other side, and you can see just for a second in there of the suits of armour from the other angle, and there's a shot of another suit of armour in there that it has a very box-style head and just a little slit in the front. Did you guys get onto that at all? It's literally in it for just a second.
I didn't notice myself.
And that to me looked like, do you guys know, do you know the story of Ned Kelly?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. It looked like Ned Kelly's famous suit of armour that he wore in Ned Kelly's Last Stand. And just for a second, it's just in the shot there. It's not obviously an exact replica because it's got like arms and legs and that type of thing, but the chest and the head bit it looked to me like it was Ned Kelly's suit of armor. And again, you kind of get it's a good way of referencing or putting the idea in people's heads that there were people who, you know, didn't get on well with the police and stood up for what they believed in and wore these crazy armored suits.
Hey, see, that's why we've got you on. That's great.
Yeah, that's all great stuff. Yeah,
I think you're onto something there.
I would say there's definitely no time. You guys are already onto it, and there's no time to go into it in this podcast. But if there's anyone listening who doesn't know the story of Ned Kelly's last stand, delete everything off your phone and go and Google that now, because it's a genuine, it's like a true life Batman story of a guy who built his own suit of armor and took on the authorities in Australia, and it's
looking at it, it very well could be a nod to that, to be honest.
Like I say, Tim Burton's attempt to go, it's not that crazy. I'm sorry I'm making this film. I'll make something with Johnny Depp soon.
Well, after that, we see Bruce again, finally. He shows off his Batman skills. He sneaks up behind the two of them.
Oh, I didn't even clock that he's using Batman skills there.
Well, you know, maybe.
I don't even know if it is Batman skills. I thought it was more like he seems to almost sort of stumble across them a bit and like, oh, wait, oh yeah. And then like, he is using bat stealth. I'll give him that.
Yeah.
The only thing it's missing is if he jumps up out of a grate in the floor that's in there for no reason at all. That would have been perfect.
Well, I like what. Sorry.
As the more films go on, like his takedowns become even more implausibly, it's just like insane. Like he just jumps all the way down a vent and then swoops out into the people, and somehow takes out 5 of them at one time.
Yeah,
you can tell we've played this game a lot.
Nose dives off a skyscraper into somebody's torso. Yeah, totally. That's fine. And he's knocked out. Of course, you'd be knocked out. Of course, I just jumped off a building onto your tits.
But we get one of Knox's. I think it's like the character of Knox is beginning to take his like downward spiral for me now. But he does have one line I'll give him where he
possibly
says, like,
my favorite line.
Yeah, but it's like the girls just like him for his big charity balls. It's like, oh yeah, that's very good. That's very good, Knox. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with admiring Bruce's balls. I mean, it's perfectly fine.
It's so at the risk of creating an unpleasant image, it's on the nose.
Yes, it's not a subtle joke.
It's not quite a double entendre. I mean, I suppose it is a double entendre, but it's so blatant. Like she does have her own slightly saucy line, doesn't she? Which is the size of his checkbook or something. Come on, guys, help me out here. She does have her own
his
line.
very large bankroll.
Yeah, which isn't. I mean, that
could be bedroll. Is that the double entendre there?
It's the large.
It's not as obvious as just saying the word balls, is it?
Anywho,
Yeah.
I should mention that because we have the getting to like each suit of armor as well, because we get close-ups in the next minute of another two, and we talk about them.
I don't know whether we're best splitting them across the 2 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, I think it'd be better. Yeah, but do them as they get their close-up. I think would be the best option. But there is one that doesn't get a close-up. That
yes, I
is
think
the
one you're talking about.
But there's one. They're both on the right-hand side. There's one down the far right corner, but there's one other one up there closer to the door. The one with it's across from the spiky head guy. Like it's like, you got all the real works of art, and then this one looks really, really clunky, and it looks very shambolically put together because he's kind of like, it looks like he's at like a proctologist or something, because he's kind of like slightly leaning forward. And it just looks really uncomfortable, and it doesn't look like it's been set up properly. It's just like, it seems as if like there was originally a much better suit of armor there that like fell over and broke on the day of filming, and they're like, just get one of the ones from the background and put it up, and then this is the best that they had.
It's like they're probably attempting to put it together, and they were like trying to get it, and they couldn't get it to fit together properly. And they're like, this is why people had squires in medieval times, because they actually know how. You can't just order a suit of armor and stick it together without having some kind of instructions for it.
I've always wanted a squire, so if anybody wants to be my squire, just get in touch with me on Twitter. and I'll take you in. Or you could be my ward. I've also wanted a ward.
I thought that was your ward. I've been putting that in my CV this whole time.
Well, if anyone's the Robin of this podcast, it's me.
What's the way of contacting the podcast for people to point out things that we've missed, and also to become your squire?
We'll drop that in at the end. Don't you worry. That's coming.
We do sort of advise that people get like a giant street floodlight and then write everything on it and then just project it up into the sky. But like it's we've yet to see anyone do it, so we're not too sure if they're just not getting the messages or it just doesn't work. But
well, back on the minute, nothing particularly interesting. It's just to be thorough. They the two of them decide, whoever needs all this stuff must be a worthless person, and unknown to them, Bruce hears it all.
Yeah. Some great facial tics from Michael Keaton as well, as he's just nosying into this conversation.
I love him. He sizzles, doesn't he? Everything. He's drinking it all in. It's maximum Keaton. I couldn't describe it in any way, because if I knew his secret, I would be doing it myself. But it's just beautiful the way he handles it.
This is why he's the perfect Batman. He's our Batman. He's our man.
But like, I do like it's the perfect setup for like the payoff that line, and like the more they have, the less they're worth, and this guy must be the most worthless man in America. But in the '86 script, the previous scene with Bruce Wayne, like not telling Vicky Vale who he is, that's not in it. This is actually our first introduction to Bruce. Is that they say that, and then he says from behind them, "Oh, I'm disappointed. Why not the most worthless man in the world?" And then that's supposed to be the camera goes. It's like, it's Bruce Wayne, everybody.
Going off what you said though, Bruce's fake life is definitely working. Then they're sold hook, line, and sinker. They're falling for all this facade.
You're right. It's I hadn't thought about that, but it's Playboy Bruce, isn't it? Being being reinforced.
Because you don't get too much of that in this movie compared to like the Christopher Nolan ones. They emphasize that more. Yeah,
it's one of the things I really like about it. But I want to talk about that a bit more in the next minute. But it's one of the things that's so great about Keaton in it. Is that the balance is much more in favor of Bruce Wayne than it is Batman.
Oh yeah. Well, that's all I've got for the minute. Anyway, I don't know about you. Have you got anything?
Yeah, I think that's me too.
I've just got like a little like residual notes on just to say like because if we look at again like when we're talking about Ratcatcher, again this probably adds credence to the idea that he is not that's not a nod towards that character, because he was introduced in DC in April of 1988. Which is just like this, unless it was like a production guy who was like, "Oh, I really love this new character. We have to put him in the movie."
Well, actually, no, hang on. I think that supports the theory. He's a new character. He's, I don't know how prominent he is, but he's a new character. He's in the comics. There's not enough time to get him in the script in any way. Throw in a visual reference, maybe.
I don't know.
It's one of those things that's plausible.
Yeah,
but it's almost, I don't believe it for a second.
Yeah,
and I'll defend it.
I will also note as well that like his ability to control rats and whatnot makes him very similar to fans of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles will recognize that those are the traits of the Rat King, who also debuted in the Turtles comics in 1988 in February. So that's
a rivalry.
Like, I don't think it's a rivalry. I think it's flat out the DC were like, have you seen what they're doing over the Turtles thing? That's a good idea for a character. We should give him a way better design and then just rip that guy off wholesale. Or
is it just, the cultural events of the time? Was New York just overrun with rats? That's another possibility.
I think, it could have been during Giuliani. Well, would Giuliani been in cleaning up New York at that point?
I thought Giuliani was early 2000s, wasn't he?
I thought he was like 80s through 90s, but like, because I know he's definitely in the 90s because he's in an episode of Seinfeld, but like as like Mayor Giuliani.
Well, I know he's referenced in a song by La Tigre in the 90s. So.
Really? I was about to say that he was referenced in rap by Jedi Mind Tricks, the absolutely brilliant homophobic rap gang.
Oh God!
And they were also very like conspiracy theory in the early 2000s. And he opens a verse with, they call me Kubla Khan. I'm ready with a machete for Rudy Giuliani.
Oh, that's good.
But that may be a different person, given that that's not his name.
That really annoys me, though, as well, at the end, because you just, in your head, you're going to be like, knee. Like, just finish the word.
Add it in every time.
Yeah. But, beyond that, that's... there was a thing I was going to mention about the shields, but I guess we can leave that.
Tell me what's going on with the shields. I really wish... I looked into it. Why are those shields... Why are they designed like that with the swirly red cross on the black background? That's obviously not a medieval design, because they didn't do things like that.
I didn't take like an actual factual thing, but I thought it backed up the idea that, like... Bruce Wayne has taken ideas from these suits of armors and stuff, and then that this shield was like obviously some kind of crest, and it might have been like he got the idea in his head of like, oh, it's like an emblem, like, and that would have led to the bat symbol. Like it's one of those like little planted seeds, but it's also as well in terms of like, if you take this to be the first indication, like that Bruce Wayne is Batman, here's a little sign that like he's got all these weird suits of armor that he could be appropriating things from. And then it's like literally, this is like an X marks the spot kind of thing of like, here's the first sign.
Just so for people who don't know what we're on about, as they step through the doors, the suits of armor either side of the door, the shields, like teardrop shaped shields, have a red swirly cross on a black background on each of them, and it's very eye catching. So, and it's certainly not there by a mistake.
Oh no,
stuff like that doesn't happen by mistake. But I could not find. I googled it, and all my Google searches have proved fruitless for my research on this. I found a reference to a Red Cross, Google Tim Burton Red Cross, and there's a book, Essays on Tim Burton, and it had a little quote from there, and it was saying that in Sleepy Hollow, before one of the many posh bad people die in the church, they're stood in front of a window in the church with a red cross on it, but that's like a standard crucifix cross. So I was no closer to getting to the bottom of why there was this weird swirly X marks the spot style cross on there. But are you suggesting that what are you suggesting now?
I'm suggesting that to be there, as they walk in, those X's are literally marking like, this is your first sign that something's off about this guy, that they should be taking as like, this is weird that he's got these things, and like that could be the beginning of planting the seeds of like, there could be more to Bruce Wayne than we know, and that kind of thing. Also, again, as I said, potentially, this is where he could have got the inspiration of like, well, if I had like a symbol on the front as I'm going out that people would look at and be quite eye catching, and then he made that into the bat symbol down the line somehow. Well, this is all in theory, There's no factual text to back this up. So
first, he made it into a special K. I hope some Simpsons fans are listening to this. Otherwise, that's just going to fall flat.
But it's like, well, this podcast was okay, but it's no ball, a special K. Just like kissing the box.
I suppose in having it be an X, that's an X marks the spot. X. Almost literally like on a map. Is this scene here with all the different continents of the world represented also a little hint for the uninitiated that a lot of Batman's training took place all around the world, that he's like an extremely well-traveled guy?
This is a thing I think like we can get into more in the next minute, because it specifically comes up then that he mentions his travels. So you're right, save it. Yeah. So
save it.
Yep. But that's I'm done anyway, for this minute at least.
Good.
So
we're pushing nearly an hour, so we'll wrap this up. So Ricky, will you join us again on Friday's show?
Yes,
good. But where can the good people get in touch with you if they want to talk to you about Batman or anything?
There's at Rikky Wiley on Facebook. No, on Twitter. And you can find me on Facebook on that name as well. It's RIKKY and then WILEY. The RIKKY people always get wrong, and I find it heartbreaking that they do. They always spell it Rikky Lake style. It's certainly not Rikky Lake style. Or my friends see me write it like that and they think it's some kind of affectation. But it's from... I had to spell it R-I-K when I was a kid because I was called Rick as a kid and you could only put 3 letters in the high score tables on a ZX Spectrum.
Yes, so I was lucky as John. With no H. John with no H.
So I was always Rick, and then when people started calling me Ricky, the only natural evolution from that was R-I-K-K-Y, and I've already spoken more about it than is really warranted.
Well, no problem. Feel free to tweet him, obviously. And you can get in touch with us on Facebook. We've got our Bat Minute 89 page, or there's the Bat Minute 89 Listeners Society. Or you can tweet us at BatMinute89. Or look us up as well on Instagram.
An armory turns amorous.
And we're also on Tumblr, although we don't use it very much. So if you do get in touch with us, we will use it. So do that. It'll inspire us to go on there more. And give us a review on iTunes. That'll help us out greatly. And make sure you tune in again on Friday, where we'll have minute 21 of Batman.